Welcome, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed my first interview with genetic counselors from South Africa. I have Vaishnavi Suresh here today, all the way from Hyderabad, India. She is a genetic counselor working in Hyderabad. And thank you, Vaishnavi, for being a part of this project and giving me this opportunity to understand genetic counseling better, of how it works in India. So now I leave it up to you, and I'd request you to please introduce yourself to the audience and let them know a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Steve, for giving me this opportunity. So, hello everyone, I'm Vaishnavi Suresh. I'm a board certified genetic counselor, level 1 genetic counselor, working with Anderson Diagnostics and Labs. As Ms. Disha already introduced, I work in Hyderabad. So, basically, I don't just work with Hyderabad, I look up cases in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh.
Mhm.
So, should I tell about my education background as well?
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Just about
All
your
right.
background as well.
All right. So I completed my master's in human genetics and molecular biology from Bharathiar University, Coimbatore. After which I did a PG diploma in medical genetics and genetic counseling from Kamdeni Hospital, Hyderabad. So I completed my 1-year PG diploma under the President of Board of Genetic Counseling India, Dr. Ani Hassan. So it was a 1-year full-fledged course, after which I gave my certification exam. And right now I'm a level 1 certified genetic counselor. I've been working for about a year now.
That's fantastic, Vaishnavi. So could you give us a bit of idea about what was the different ways of becoming a genetic counselor in India? I know you said you did a master's and then you did a PG diploma of 1 year. And you also said that you had to write an examination and you had to submit a letter of reference and do an interview. So can you give us a
Yeah.
brief idea about what are the different ways of genetic counseling or becoming a genetic counselor in India? What was the
Uh,
examination like and what was the interview like?
Sure. So, Kamini Hospitals Hyderabad offers a 1-year PG diploma. So you should either be a BTech graduate, either in biotechnology or genetic engineering, either of the life science background, or you have to have a master's degree in one of the life science courses, or you could do a 5-year MBBS. So the criteria goes 3+2, that is BSc plus MSc, or a 4-year BTech, or a 5-year MBBS. That is for Kamini Hospitals Hyderabad.
Mm-hmm.
VIT, Vellore Institute of Technology, also offers genetic counseling course under the stream called as Biomedical Sciences along with genetic counseling. So it's a 2-year master's from VIT. Manipal hospitals offer 1-year PG diploma like Kamini Hospital. Kasturba Medical College offers a 2 years master's in genetic counseling. Also, right now, NIMS, Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences in Hyderabad, is also offering a 2-year master's for genetic counseling.
Hmm.
So after you complete a course, you can directly apply for the BGCI exam.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes what happens is, if you're doing your masters, the last 6 months, the project time, you can either shadow under a genetic shadow under a genetic counselor, and you can give your exam.
Mm-hmm.
Or for that matter, if you're a BTech graduate and you do not want to do a 1-year course, but you want to become a certified genetic counselor, you should still do a 6 months internship
Okay.
under a senior genetic counselor. You should have at least seen 50 cases minimum. So
Mm-hmm.
for level 1 counseling, you need to have 22 cases,
Okay.
20 short cases and 2 long cases.
Okay.
So if you are eligible, if you have followed all the criteria, if you're eligible, then you can give your BGCI exam.
Mm-hmm.
So so for the BGCI exam, usually what happens is, the first day would be an return examination. So in the
Mm-hmm.
return examination, you have to have 50%.
Okay.
So if you have minimum of 50%, which means you're qualified. So if you have 50% and above, you will be selected for the interview.
Mm-hmm.
So once the interview is done, then the results will be out, telling whether you're a certified genetic counselor or not. The same thing goes with level 2 counseling as well. But the only difference between level 1 and level 2 counseling is, for level 1, you need to have 22 cases. For level 2, you should have 50 cases.
Okay. Okay. Yep. That's fantastic. Looks like there are quite a different options that aspiring genetic counselors can
Yeah, it's
choose.
biomedical genetics with genetic counseling. I think I said biomedical sciences. I'm sorry. It's
Okay,
biomedical genetics with genetic counseling from
okay,
BIT.
okay, great. Fantastic. So now that you spoke a little about the examination and what percentage is required,
Yeah.
could you give us just maybe a little more information about what does the examination look like? Like, what's the subject of the examination and the interview as well?
For the BGCI or for Kamini entrance. There are,
For
because for
BGCI.
both, you have to for BGCI already. So for BGCI, you'll for level one for level one certification, you'll have about 100 questions. It's from every aspect: psychology, psychosocial, and what are the different conditions, and what are the genes involved in certain conditions, or they might give you a case and they might ask you what do you think is this condition. It will be a straightforward questions for a level one counseling. For level two, it's going to be a little difficult because there'll be a lot of psychosocial aspects and risk assessment and all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
level one counseling are psychosocial, psychological, and basics of what is genetic counseling, what is genetics, and all of that.
Okay.
Say if they give you a case scenario and they ask you to, and they might ask you like what is what pattern of inheritance do you think this follows?
Mm-hmm.
So you have autosomal dominant recessive, X-linked dominant recessive, Y-linked
Yeah.
mitochondrial. So they
Mm-hmm.
might give you a case and they might be like, what pattern of inheritance does the above case follow? Or say in for Fragile X syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
what is the number of repeats? After which number of repeats do you call it a syndromic? After which number of repeats do you think it is normal? So they give you the number of repeats and you have to. It's a multiple choice question basically.
Yeah. Okay.
It's about an hour. So on the same day, you receive an SMS on your phone telling whether you're clear to the interview or not.
Oh,
For
okay.
level one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for level one interview, there'll be a panel of three members: a
Mm-hmm.
clinician, a psychologist, and a level two certified genetic counselor.
Okay.
So usually they ask you questions from the logbook that you've submitted. They might
Okay.
ask you to, because there are two, because we for level one we give two long cases, right? So we give the
Mm-hmm.
psychosocial aspect that we have seen along with the for the particular case. So they might ask you to explain a little about why have you suggested this test and not this test.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just basic. So for level one, it will be a panel of three members, and the
Fantastic.
interview goes about 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah,
Oh, okay. It all looks like a quick process as well, which is really nice to know because I remember at times when I was studying my bachelor's in India, and you used to have to write these entrance examinations. It kind of,
yeah,
I think normally it takes around a month or so to kind of receive your results. So it's good to see that the BGCI exam results, you get to know it immediately the same day, whether you,
yeah.
cleared it or not. And I think,
Not clear to the interview.
yeah.
After the interview, it takes about a week or so for the
Mhm.
results to be out.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Vaishnavi. That was a very detailed answer. And I'm sure
Yeah,
a lot of Indian genetic counselors who are wanting to become genetic counselors,
yeah,
if they're listening to this video, I'm sure they will have got something really useful out of the information that you've provided. And just to all my listeners again, in the end of the video, when I post the video, I will also put on some contact details of Vaishnavi in the post, in case if anyone has any questions or needs further clarification. Vaishnavi is more than happy to help you out
yeah.
with.
Answer all the, yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on. Now that we've got to know a bit about your background and about the genetic counseling prerequisites in India,
Mhm.
let's talk a little about genetic counseling in India, in terms of um, what field of genetic counseling you work in and what do you do as a genetic counselor.
Okay. So I work with prenatal and reproductive genetic counseling. Also, I look at pediatrics and other genetic counseling, but mainly, what is the main stream that I look into is prenatal and reproductive genetic counseling.
Mm-hmm.
So, in reproductive genetic counseling, it could either be primary infertility or secondary infertility, recurrent pregnancy loss, and all that. For prenatal, the basics of Usually, mostly the cases that I dealt with in this 1 year is prenatal and reproductive genetic counseling and a few pediatric cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
So this
where
is
do
my
you,
main.
so how long has it been you've worked as a genetic counselor, and where do you work as a
Been,
genetic counselor?
it's been a year now.
Okay. And
Yeah.
where are you working as a genetic counselor?
I'm working with Anderson Diagnostics and Labs.
Okay, okay, great. Well, that's interesting to know that you kind of cover all the specialty areas of genetic counseling. So, is it that in India, when you do genetic counseling, you kind of work as a general genetic counselor and not in specialized areas?
No, we do not. You're asking me if there are genetic counselors only for pediatrics, if they're genetic counselors only. No. So the thing is, in India, we have two sectors. One is the private and one is public. So public is basically all the hospitals, and private is like how I work in labs, the various labs like my Anderson Diagnostics and Labs. So we look mainly into prenatal and reproductive genetic
Mm-hmm,
counseling. So in India, generally, for each hospital, there'll be one genetic counselor, and all the cases go to that particular genetic counselor,
mm-hmm.
be it pediatrics, be it adult, say in oncology or prenatal or reproductive, any of it.
Okay,
So they all go to one particular genetic counselor. But
interesting.
if you're working in one particular field for years together, you have a specialized field. Say if I've been working with oncology, I'm an oncogenetic counselor for about 3 or 4 years, which means
Mm-hmm,
I've already had a specialization in oncology.
mm-hmm,
So what happens is, in India, usually we do not have something called as this particular genetic counselor, that particular genetic counselor. With years, you become specialized with that particular field.
okay,
Usually, we look at all the cases.
okay,
In general,
interesting.
we look at all the cases. Yeah, be
That
it
is
from
quite
starting from
interesting. Mm-hmm.
pediatric, premarital, prenatal, adult, reproductive, everything.
Yeah. Amazing. So looks like
Yeah.
it kind of is an advantage because that way you don't learn aspects or updates just from one specialized field of genetic counseling, but you're kind of being up to date and informed with genetic counseling in all aspects, in prenatal and reproductive, in pediatric. Fantastic. Moving on, could you please elaborate on one of your most difficult or unique case in terms of the patient you visited, any knowledge gaps you had, maybe, and how did you handle the challenging case?
All right. So there was a case where it was a primary infertility case. So primary infertility is when you have unprotected sex for about more than a year and still you're not able to conceive. So this couple was married for about 6 or 7 years and they were unable to conceive and they came to me with a karyotyping report.
Mm-hmm.
So in the karyotyping report, the male had 9QH positive and YQH negative.
Okay.
So these are polymorphic variants.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had a look at his semen analysis, his sperm count also was very low. The
Mm-hmm.
motility was very low. So I had to explain them what are chromosomes, how is it inherited, what is a polymorphic variant, everything. And then I had to give him an option of donor sperm.
Mm-hmm.
So the husband was surprisingly ready to go in for a donor sperm, but the wife wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to sit with them and I'm not somebody who has to tell, I can only, I have to be in such a way that these are your options. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot force them to, you have to do donor. That's not what a genetic counselor does.
Yeah.
So when I was counseling them, I understood, you know, that there was something that's happening. I need to talk to them. So what happened was I sent the husband out. I spoke to the wife separately, and all of a sudden she began to cry. I didn't know. I mean, she was like, I had to, first calm her down. I gave her water. I let her, I was like, you take your time, you settle down, then let's talk. She
Mm-hmm.
took about 5 to 10 minutes. I was like, okay, fine. Are you ready to talk? She's like, yeah, I'm ready to talk. So I asked her, what's happening? Your husband is ready for donors from what's, I mean, just tell me whatever it is. She was like, this is not going to be my child. And what will my neighbors talk? What are my cousins going to talk? Everybody is gonna blame me that I have some problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go in for a donor sperm, it's not going to be our child.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure my cousins are going to blame me for it, telling this is somebody else's sperm. So I had to make her understand, there are so many psychosocial aspects that was involved. I had to make her understand, oh, this is not how to do. You settle down. You come. Then after I spoke to her like for about 20 minutes, she was fine. Then I sent her out and I called the husband in.
Mm-hmm.
And the husband began to cry, telling, I have a problem because of which you're not able to have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem. Kept on saying that I have a problem. I had to tell him that it is not a problem. This happens in general population as well. These are just polymorphic variants. It's not, and it is irrespective of sex. It
Yeah.
could happen in females also. It is not a problem.
Yeah.
It's not at all a problem. So he kept telling me, no, I have a problem. I have a problem. Because of me, we are not able to conceive.
Yeah.
I am ready for a donor sperm, but my wife is not ready for a donor sperm. What do we do? And everything. So I have to sit through entire. I have to give them emotional support and everything. And I called the wife back, and they both were like, "Okay, fine, we will decide, and we'll get back to you." So they have. They're taking their time because it's not a small decision. Donor
Yeah.
sperm is not a small decision. So they're taking their time. I still have their number. I mean, after they go back to their hometown, they gave me a call telling, ma'am, we'll discuss and we'll get back to you, ma'am. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, sure, take your time because it is not a small thing. Overnight, you can discuss, or within 2 days, you have to discuss. I know it takes time. They're taking their time. I'm like, yeah, because I'm sure whatever they decide, I'm gonna be with them. If they, and I even told them, wanted once. If they told me, can't we try with our own gamma? I said, yeah, you can try this. It's not like you shouldn't try or you cannot try. You can try because he has one normal 9 chromosome and he has one normal X chromosome. So I
Yeah.
told him, yeah, you can try. I mean, there's nothing like you shouldn't try or you cannot try. So they were like, okay, we'll decide. If that is the case, then I want to try once with my own self gamete and see how it goes about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can decide. It's like, okay, yeah.
Okay.
So this is what happens in India. You have a lot of psychosocial aspects to deal with. You have to give them emotional support. You have to stay with them throughout the counseling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess it's I can only imagine that probably genetic counseling is even more difficult in parts of Asia, or maybe for that matter, underdeveloping countries or developing countries. I think the reason being is that it's not your individual decision, but it's the entire society in the background that plays a huge role and has a huge impact on the decision that you are making. And
yeah,
I guess that is why it kind of is so important that the BCGI had made this kind of strategy where you need to have a 6 months genetic counseling shadowing experience, and where you need to know the counseling aspects of genetic counseling. So
also, yeah, you were saying?
no, continue.
Also, in India, it's not just the couple that comes for counseling,
Hmm.
the entire family comes for counseling. So
Wow.
you have the father-in-law, the mother-in-law, the father, the mother, especially when it's a prenatal case.
Yeah.
And suppose when you get a high risk on NIPT or high risk on a marker, then you have to go in for invasive procedure for confirmation.
Yeah.
So the entire family comes and you explain them, telling why is it important? What is amniocentesis? Why is it important?
Hmm.
What are the outcomes? Everything you have to explain them because both NIPT and marker are just the screening tests. The
Hmm.
confirmatory is going to be your invasive amniocentesis or CVS.
Yeah.
So the entire family comes and sits. Or for that matter, if they have a previous child affected with a condition
Hmm.
and they have to do testing in the amniotic fluid for the second pregnancy.
Hmm.
So you have to explain them why is it important,
Yeah.
what percentage of a condition could come, the risk assessment.
Hmm.
So for that the entire family comes and they sit.
Yeah.
So you have to explain them. So it is not an individual's decision. It's in India. It's like a collective decision.
Yeah.
So even if you're explaining to a patient, at last they would say one thing: "Okay, ma'am, we'll go back to our home. We'll discuss with our family and we'll get back."
We'll get back. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you know it better. You're from India as
Yeah.
well. So you know how is
I
it
guess
in
yes.
Indian families?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that is what happens in India.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
that
You're
matter,
very right.
Kamini, yeah, and in Kamini we do have a psychologist taking up classes, and towards the end we even have role play.
Okay.
So we'll have, like, a person becomes a patient and we become the genetic counselors, and we take up the most difficult case. We pick
Yeah.
up the most difficult case and we enact the scenario,
Yeah.
and the psychologist guides us how to, be patient, how to be polite,
Yeah.
how do you, and all of this comes with experience. It
Yes.
cannot happen overnight. So if you
Absolutely.
start seeing 3 cases, 4 cases individually, you'll
Yeah.
get to know how to interact with patients,
Yeah.
how to talk to them, what pace, or you should talk to them slowly, or shouldn't be very fast because they do not understand.
Yeah.
You should talk to them slowly, use simple language and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I cannot agree enough with, whatever you said, because yes, I am from India. And I think to anyone who's listening to this video, it's quite interesting that back in India, the culture is such where not just in health issues or health related decisions, but pretty much every important step or decision in your life, no matter how tiny step that can be, is still impacted and based on your family relations and on your family elders, basically. So yeah, that I think I see that as a challenge as well in genetic counseling. But yeah, we will discuss on that a little further, I guess.
Sure.
Now, moving on, could you give an insight to our listeners on what percentage of your job goes in seeing patients? What percentage do you get to actually contribute towards learning and research, which I think is an important aspect again in being a genetic counselor? And before seeing a patient, do you get enough time, or do you usually get to study the patient case before in hand?
All right. So what happens? I mean, right now the scenario is changing in India. Initially, it used to be like today afternoon. If we have counseling, I would receive a call today in the morning saying that we have a counselor. So
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't get enough time to research about the particular case because every case is unique. Every case requires, you know the way you counsel, the what test you have to suggest, it's going to differ from patient to patient, case
Yeah.
to case. So
Yeah.
initially in the beginning of my work it was quite difficult, quite challenging, because I used to have about an hour or so, and most of the times patients do not send you the reports in prior.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever reports there, I have to see it on spot during counseling, before counseling. So
Mm-hmm.
once the patient comes and sits, after I take their details, only
Mm-hmm.
then I would be able to see their reports. But right now during lockdown, when it is a virtual genetic counseling, the scenario has changed. I get reports at least a 1 day prior, or at least a few hours prior to the counseling. So I have enough time to read about it
Yeah.
and suggest. I read through, because usually it takes a lot of time, because you start reading one paper,
Yeah.
then you get a link of another paper, you go read another paper. So keep
Yeah.
on continuously keep reading, so you won't know.
Yeah.
So right now, because of this changing scenario, I'm getting enough time to read through the case
Yeah.
and enough time to research about the particular case,
Mm-hmm.
and only then I'm able to give the right test. So
Yeah.
initially, it used to be very difficult because it used to be on spot, and you
Yeah.
cannot give a wrong test. You cannot imagine if it is a simple karyotype error,
Yeah.
and you're giving a big test such as clinical exome sequencing, which is very costly. Which means you have to think of the patient's mindset and what background they come from also.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, if it is a simple karyotype error and if you're giving a very big test, it does not make sense.
Yeah.
So it is challenging for me also. It used to be challenging for me as well. So giving the right test and reading through the case and understanding them, because genetic counseling happens usually it takes about an hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour
Mm-hmm.
generally. But if there is a social aspect that is involved, it will take another few minutes or half an hour extra.
Mm-hmm.
So initially it was challenging, because you have to be alert. You should know every test, and because every case is new, you should be alert enough. When you take the family history, you'll get to know that okay, is this test right or is that test right? But because of me, when it is virtual right now during this lockdown period, I'm getting enough time to research and, you know, give
Mm-hmm.
the, yeah, I have enough time to research and read through the case. Yeah,
Interesting. So looks
yeah.
like COVID-19 has done something good to your profession there. And yes,
No, it is actually quite challenging to do it virtually because um, you do not get that connect when you're sitting face to face, when you're sitting
yeah,
right opposite to each other and you're talking to them. Oh,
yeah.
because there are a lot of emotions involved, and on virtual, it's very difficult to, understand their background. And
Mhm.
yeah, first two cases was quite challenging for me, but from third case, I picked up the pace, and yeah, I'm able to understand
Yeah,
what are they going through, and it, yeah,
interesting.
it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and so a part of the question was also about I've heard a lot about how genetic counselors have to do constant learning and research and be up to date with the current debates or current scenarios going on in genetics and medical sciences. So, does your job give you enough time to be able to do that learning and research?
Yes.
Okay, and so how do you manage the job workload and the learning and research? Like, do you have set conferences that you have to attend, or do you do online learning?
So especially during this lockdown, we have quite a few webinars coming up from very good hospitals and very good universities.
Mm-hmm.
So I register for that particular webinar or for that virtual conference, and I spend enough time. So when I am spending my time on a webinar or on a conference, I spend my entire time only listening to that. I do not do any other work. So from that, I like yesterday also I attended a webinar which was about an hour or 1.5 hours about male infertility.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when you are spending, and then when you also get to know, you also get to learn a lot from
Yeah,
clinicians' perspective.
yeah,
So from a researcher's perspective, what are they doing? What are the tests that they offer? Because it is all just, it's not just you that is involved. So you, first of all, in India, the patients do not directly come to genetic counselors. They go to a clinician, say
yeah.
in a gynecologist or a fetal medicine, or
Mm-hmm.
they are the ones who refer to us. So understanding their point of view from their perspective, what is it? It also it gives, it is nice because only after patients go to them, they're referred to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it is nice. I get to learn a lot attending these webinars and virtual conferences, especially during the lockdown time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if there are any conferences happening in Hyderabad or anywhere in India, and uh, if if we are available during that particular time, I do go, we do attend. So in that way, my company is like they want us to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
They want us to expand our knowledge. So they never put restriction to not learn. Because my scientific head or my director, anybody for that matter, they are very nice. They are always like learn more. If you're
Yeah,
learning, come and tell us, share your knowledge with us. We'll also learn. So they do not put any kind of restrictions from me. If
mm-hmm.
I'm going and telling, ma'am, I feel like I should attend this conference, this is important. She's immediately like, yeah, go attend because you should expand your knowledge. You should be up to date.
Yeah,
So in that way, I'm very lucky to be in this particular, Anderson Diagnostics. It gives me enough space for me to learn, for me to expand my knowledge, and there is no boundary or restriction kept.
yeah. Okay, that's quite interesting, and it's good to see that they motivate you to go and attend conferences and learn and spread and share knowledge, which is also, I guess, one reason that you are here today, sharing your experiences and your knowledge with everyone out here, which I'm sure means a lot to us as we are looking on people like you who are experienced and who are already in the field to learn. So thank you so much for that once again.
Thank you.
Yeah, and moving forward, I would want to understand what do you find are the challenges in genetic counseling in India, and what do you find the most satisfying part about the role?
Challenges that we usually face is uh, like in India, uh, we have a very, it's not like if there is one particular family, say XYZ, their family culture and everything is different from a ABC family. So
Mm-hmm.
every family that we meet is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
So the words that you use, the way you talk, the way you explain to them, and the language that you use, everything is going. So suppose in Telangana, if I'm counseling a patient, my way of talking, my Telugu is different. And when I go to Vizag, which is in Andhra Pradesh, my way that I talk Telugu is entirely different.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to overcome the language barriers as well. So you need to know even the small terms. What is a uterus called, or what are gametes called. Even few patients do not even know what are this sorry what are those tiny terms called. So even for that you need to learn in Telugu.
Mm-hmm.
And but luckily I know I talk fluently in four languages: Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, and English. So
Okay.
if you're working with a particular state, it's always better to know their local language.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for the patients to interact, because not every patient knows English, or not every patient knows Hindi, for that matter. Because when I get patients, I get from rural places, interior of Telangana, interior of Andhra Pradesh, who, to them you need to explain them in the most simple language, in the most simple terms you need to use.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other challenges are, as I said previously, we start get reports of patients prior to counseling, so I used to not have enough time to research. Whatever it is during my history taking and during my clinical history, whatever details I'm taking, during that time I have to just breathe through the case and understand the case and then give the test.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise it is nice. It's a very nice smooth process. Patients come, they sit. I do not start the counseling as soon as they come.
Yeah.
First 2-3 minutes would be and like what basic details. What is their name, where are they from, what work do they do,
Yeah. Like
all of
building
that
rapport
basic, so
and
that,
introduction.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if they're coming from if they're coming from a different district, I would ask them, how did you come? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Really? Oh, nice. You came by bus. How was the bus journey? Basic. So they should also feel comfortable. They shouldn't be like, okay, there is something going to happen. And
Yeah.
then I'll tell them. So this session is going to take about 45 minutes to an hour. So shall we start? And then they're like, yeah. So then I would start taking their details and everything.
Yeah.
So in that way, patients are also comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you. Now moving on, I would so I've heard from everyone that I've spoken to date that they find the key skills for genetic counseling are different, and usually the answers that you get, one or two points are pretty much common. I know a lot of them obviously say that it's mainly the counseling skills, but I think we all would love to know from you, what do you think are the key skills in genetic counseling from your experience?
Okay. So as you already mentioned, communication is one of the important tool for genetic counseling, because if you do not talk in the language they understand, it becomes very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So one is communication. This main and the most important tool is rapport building. If you do not build a good rapport with patients, they're not going to give you the exact answers to your questions.
Mm-hmm.
So when you ask them about their previous pregnancy, if you do not build a good rapport, they do not even, sometimes they do not even disclose what is happening, because they
Yeah.
do not feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So first you have to make them comfortable, build a good rapport,
Mm-hmm.
have a good communication, and then empathy. Empathy is one of the main things. So when they're telling you, be empathetic, don't be sympathetic.
Yeah.
So yeah, so empathy is one of the main things. Non-directive counseling
Hmm.
is the main thing. So you counsel and you give them everything, and then you put various options on a plate, and you
Yeah.
tell them you can choose any of it. We are going to be with you. We are
Yeah.
always there with you.
Yeah.
So it is them who have to choose what they want. We are nobody to tell them. We are not supposed to give them one option and tell them you should do this. That is not a counselor's job. to
Yeah.
give them two, three options if available, and
Yeah.
tell them you can do this. We are we are going to be there with you through the process. We are with you.
Yeah.
So non-directive counseling, good rapport building, empathy, and good communication. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, good. You should look good. You should be presentable to a patient.
Yeah.
So always smile and talk to them in a nice way. If you're angry or if you're like this, they also don't feel like talking to you.
Yeah.
So have a nice smile, be presentable, look good, make them feel comfortable. All of this, it all it has everything is interrelated to each other.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Um, that was again a very nice, detailed answer. I guess a few things that did stood out for me was when you said your presentation matters, and I think that is what we all, anyways, have to learn in every aspect. That the way you present, no matter how your day goes, even if you're having a bad day, but when you're meeting the patient, you have to make sure that you seem sound, calm, and composed, so that they feel comfortable enough to share their life stories with you and their issues with you.
Usually, they're very anxious when they come to you. They come with mixed emotions. They come with, as if you're the only hope. You're the only person with whom they can share everything. And you have to give them that guarantee. You know, like, yeah, we are there with you. We are going to be with you throughout the process, no matter what.
Okay, interesting.
So
Yeah. And moving forward, when we discussed about a difficult or a unique case, I remember when we were speaking before deciding to go ahead with this interview, there was one very interesting scenario that you had shared with me, um,
yes,
because like when I was talking to you, I was telling about how I've heard that genetic counseling is also a lot about maintaining good relation with everyone that you know. And also when you told me that patients do not come directly to you, and in India not everyone is aware of genetic counseling, you usually have to do a bit of marketing, and you have to kind of go meet people, you have to meet clinicians, geneticists, and you have to tell them to direct the patients towards you. So would
yes.
you like to talk a bit about that, maybe that conversation that we had?
Sure. So there was this case of epidermolysis bullosa. So there was this particular patient. He's an engineer. He's currently doing his PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So he read through what is genetic counseling, and he approached me via LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
So he left me a text telling, "Ma'am, I have this condition EB, and I would seek, I want genetic counseling. So could you tell me how to go about, and how do I come and where do I come and everything?" So I spoke to him. We exchanged numbers. I spoke to him over the phone, and I told him what is genetic counseling and what is the procedure and how long it takes and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he's from Chennai.
Okay.
So I'm from Hyderabad. So we have my friend is working with Anderson Diagnostics in Chennai.
Mm-hmm.
So I immediately called her up and I told her, see, there's a case of ED and he requires counseling. Could you please take it forward from here? Because I'm from Hyderabad. It's always better to, I mean, I also talked in Tamil, but she was a better option. That is what I felt, because she's
Yeah.
been seeing cases in Tamil for about a year now.
Yeah.
So she's more fluent in Tamil, because I haven't seen any Tamil cases till now.
Okay.
Also, I live in Hyderabad. I mostly do counseling in Telugu or in Hindi. My
Yeah.
mother tongue is Tamil though. So, but she is more fluent in Tamil, and she's been seeing cases in Tamil for about a year. So I thought she is a better option,
Mm-hmm.
and I directed the case to her, and she took up the case for counseling. So if you have counselors, say if there is a counselor who you know who speaks good Marathi, and if the patient doesn't even know Hindi and speaks only Marathi, it's always better you refer them to that particular counselor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what matters is patient satisfaction.
Yeah.
Whether they have understood the particular why are they doing this test, what is the condition, what is the importance of the
yeah,
test,
yeah.
what could be the outcome of the test. So
Mhm.
it is always better that they understand. So I immediately called up my friend and I told her there's a case, and you have to, and that person is from Chennai. Could you please take it forward from here? She was more than happy. She was like, yeah, sure. And how did you get this patient? I was like, I got, he texted me on LinkedIn. And so yeah, then he came. They had a counseling, and the patient, even after counseling, he left me a text telling, "Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah,
Means a lot." And if I wanted, I could take up the case. That's not an
yeah,
issue because I talk Tamil. But why I had referred is because she's been seeing cases in Tamil for about a year now, so
yeah,
she's, more fluent in that language. So she took up the case, and there was testing done, there was post-test counseling done.
yeah,
The patient is still in touch with me. He keeps texting me every now and then, telling, "Ma'am, if I wish to do a prenatal, I mean, if I'm getting married in a few years, should I do a prenatal testing or what should I do?" So I told him, like, before you go in for prenatal, your wife also should be checked once. Only if she is a carrier, then you have to do a testing and
yeah.
all of that. So yeah.
Interesting. I think, again, what stands out to me over here is that no matter which country you are from, this profession is all about patient choice and patient at the center of the entire process. And I think that comes well established from the history of genetic counseling, as developed by Sheldon and Kessler, where they had spoken about how they think genetic counseling should be a profession about patient choice, and it should not be more of a doctor and a patient relation, but more of a counselor or a guider to the patient. So thank you again.
uh, yeah, also, if somebody has any doubt, so my friend and I, we were about 5 or 6 people in the course. So
Hmm.
suppose if she is unable to I mean, if she has cases in a particular, if she has doubts for a particular case, she immediately calls me up and she's like, Vaishu, I have this particular case, how do I go about, what
Yeah,
do you think I should suggest? Then
yeah,
I tell her. Or if I am getting stuck, I call them up and I'm like, how do I proceed from here? So it is all about exchanging knowledge, and she knows, like, right now I'm more into prenatal and
yeah,
reproductive counseling. So she calls me up and we have discussion for about half an hour to 45 minutes. I tell her, you can tell them this, you can tell them this,
yeah,
and she's like, thank you so much. And yeah, it's all about, if you are unable to, you're not able to know, like, is this option right or is this option right? You can always call up your fellow genetic counselor and discuss the case with them. They'll tell you their inputs. You can come to a conclusion, and then you can give the right option for the patient.
yeah.
So it is all about how you maintain a good rapport even with your fellow genetic counselors.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so it's about collaboration and teamwork,
Yes.
and helping out each other in the profession as well.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Moving forward, I think it's quite interesting because we are the current youth generation of the profession, and we're the ones who will be moving forward in this profession as well. So I think it is good time for me to ask you, what do you think, what according to you is the future of genetic counseling, and what do you see as the ethical issues in this profession?
All right. So in India, genetic counseling is a growing field, and right now, see, as we've already discussed before, so my profession, about 30 to 35% of my profession, I go on field.
Yeah.
So it is about how you establish yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to, when you're going and meeting certain clinicians, when you go and tell them, I'm a counselor and this is what I do, there is a profession called as genetic counseling and this is what I do. So if you have any cases, say if you have any cases that require counseling, such as recurrent pregnancy loss or secondary infertility or primary infertility, you can always refer them to us. So it is about how you establish yourself,
Yeah.
because not everybody is aware of what genetic counseling is.
Yeah.
So, about 30 to 35% of my profession, I go on field myself and I establish myself, I introduce myself, I tell them what I do.
Yeah.
And yeah, now I have good rapport with quite a few clinicians. So if they have a case and
Yeah.
they are like, if they have a sample that has to be sent, say POC, product of consumption sample, and they
Mhm.
call me up and they're like, Vaishnavi, we have this case. What test do you suggest? And could you give counseling to the patient? I'm like, yeah, I will do it. And so like this, I have three or four clinicians who directly call me and they are like, initially it used to be they used to call the marketing person and they used to be like we need an appointment from genetic
Yeah.
counselor and we have this case, and the marketing person used to call me and tell there is this case. There used to be a communication gap between me and the clinician. Once I
Yeah.
went on field and I spoke to the clinician, because it is all a matter of how you establish yourself. So
Yeah.
right now I get calls directly from clinicians saying this is the particular case we have and we need counseling, and what
Yeah.
is the test do you what is the test that you suggest.
Yeah.
It's all about how you establish yourself.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. And coming to ethical issues, uh, as I already told, it depends from case to case, from family to family.
Hmm.
So a few families, they would believe in prenatal testing, invasive testing. A few families, they don't.
Yeah.
So it's all about how you explain them and how you do. And at the end of the day, it is their choice.
Yeah.
It is their choice. So as in what they want to do. You
Yeah.
only give them options.
Yeah.
You do not participate in decision making. You'll be in the process of you'll be with them, you'll tell them that these are the options, these are things, if you do this test this is going to be, if you do this
Yeah.
test these are the outcomes. But at the end of the day, it is the patient's choice, it is the patient's wish whether they want to do the testing or not do the testing or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Fantastic. I guess, yeah, it makes sense that the future of genetic counseling, like you said, does depend a lot on the ones who are graduating as genetic counselors and being certified as genetic counselors. They go and build that network of a strong genetic counseling, and they spread the knowledge and awareness. Like, you guys are the ones who set the platform for everyone in such a huge country to know about this profession. And I think,
yeah,
yes, like you said, it does start from first the clinicians, the hospitals, the doctors, the geneticists, knowing that there is one such resource that they can use, and that's how then the patients and the public will get to know about it. So that was quite a very interesting approach that I've learned from you now, which I think
yeah.
I will use one day once I become a genetic
Let's
counselor.
see.
Yeah.
You will, I think, in about 2 years.
Oh, well, let's see if that happens. I am here and I think I will continue doing this. So I will let everyone know once
No,
I
your
get.
passion towards this field, I can see, because the way you put in efforts and the way you're trying to, talk to genetic counselors and understand what are they and what background do they come from and how they counsel and everything. It shows your passion towards this field. So yeah,
Thank
that
you.
is what
Thank you.
matters. Your
Yeah.
passion matters a lot for this
Yes.
particular field. Yeah,
There, and again, from here, I think another takeaway for everyone is, and because I've had a lot of a fellow colleagues of mine and friends of mine as well, with whom I've just recently connected virtually due to this entire COVID, which has been a fantastic advantage for me. I see COVID as a huge advantage for me. And they've often asked this question, that how do I know genetic counseling is the profession for me? And I think, like you answered, if you are a people's person, and if you want to keep patients' choice as a center point, if you're good at collaboration, and if you have passion for genetics and for this field, then it is for you. So I
yeah,
think exactly that is what you've just answered. So I know how you said that a lot of patients do not directly come to you, and usually you have to talk to the doctors, and you have to ask them to get them see a genetic counselor. So I think one interesting question that just popped up in my mind was, how is the structure of financial support for patients who come to see genetic counselors? Like, is it government funded, or do they have to take care of all the expenses, or is it different if they are referred from a doctor or if they come directly to you?
So we do not have any funding for genetic counseling as such right now. So it is, yeah, we do not have any government organization that could fund for genetic counseling. So right now in India, there is no funding for genetic counseling.
Okay.
Hope might be in near future. We might have, we might not have. I'm unsure of that. But right now, no, there is no funding for patients from it.
Okay, so it doesn't matter whether they are referred from a doctor or if they're coming directly, they have to take care of the entire expenses.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Because I think, yeah, that probably could be a future challenge of genetic counseling in India. And I think hopefully, like you said, hopefully that improves and maybe some, funding support or financial help does
Yeah,
come.
usually genetic tests are not covered under, yeah,
Okay,
any government.
interesting. So yeah, I know I had put
I would just like to ask, how was the scenario in Australia? Are genetic
um,
tests
so I just recently happened to have a brief interview with a genetic counselor in Australia. And I think as far as she told me that in scenarios where the patient is referred through a doctor, for example, if the doctors just come to know that the patient probably has cancer and they need further genetic testing or something of the similar scenario, I think in those scenarios, she said that it is most of the times covered under Medicare is like a government medical support that most of the permanent residents or Australian citizens can avail. So I, as a permanent resident, have a Medicare card. And when I go to
all
see
right?
a doctor or a GP, I usually just present my Medicare card. I don't pay anything, but I pay my taxes, which goes towards Medicare.
All
So,
right. So if you
yeah.
are not a PR, if you don't hold a PR, then how was the scenario? You should pay it
Yes,
on
I
the
think from as far as I understand, if you are not a PR, if you're an immigrant and you're not on like a permanent visa of Australia, then yes, I guess you have to incur the expenses, which can be quite expensive. And
yeah.
I think that is also a very good current topic of debate in genetic counseling, where they talk about the approach of genetic counseling towards immigrants or towards people from who are not original from that country where they are residing, and how it is impacting them. So yeah, I guess that's an entire different topic which does need to be spoken
Addressed.
on and does need to
Yeah.
be addressed in the coming future.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so moving ahead, I'm not going to ask you more about non-directive counseling because I think you have stressed enough on the fact that how non-directiveness is essential and is important, and that is what genetic counseling is all about. From what I understood, that you've said that you have to leave it as a patient choice, irrespective of you knowing a particular answer or you having a different set of mentality. It is all about, in end of the day, knowing that it is the patient's choice and their life and they need to make their decisions. So I'll not ask you that question again, so we'll move ahead. We're pretty much to the end of the interview now, but I think this question, we've touched a little on it, but I would like to know a little in detail. So I know roughly there are, I think, 22 official languages in India, which is amazing. And I guess I hardly know English, Hindi. I can talk Telugu, but I sound very funny when I talk Telugu. So I can only say things like how are you, ella unnao, uh, what are you doing, em chestunnao. So yeah, so it is very hard to keep up with those 22 languages. So how do you deal with language as a barrier? Do you have a specific or an interesting example that you had in your profession that you can share with our listeners?
Sure. Actually, it is not allowed now. It's an informal way to address someone.
I thought so. I knew I'm pretty much wrong. And it's interesting because my mother actually comes from a Telugu background. She's from a
All
Telugu
right.
family, but whenever I try to speak to my mom's side family in Telugu, they they actually immediately tell me that, don't try talking in Telugu. It's okay. You can talk in Hindi. We understand Hindi. So I try not to make a fun of myself.
All right. So it's an interesting question because with my experience over a year, I try and make I use very simple language for patients. So what do I do is, uh, I would tell my patients that imagine you have, every human being have 46 chromosomes, basics of chromosomes and everything. So what I would tell is, a human body is like a book. So every human being will have 46 chromosomes. So the pages are your chromosomes. So
Mhm.
every book will have 46 pages. Sometimes what happens is, if there are less than 46 pages or more than 46 pages, then you have to address it. So
Yeah.
I would tell them 46 pages as in chromosomes. So if it's less than 46 chromosomes or more than 46 chromosomes, then there is some issue.
Yeah.
So usually what happens is, they would be like, okay, but they come with you with the karyotyping report and they're like, yeah, we have 46 chromosomes. I would be like, yeah. So what the next thing is, so on those pages you have words written. Those are called as genes. So
Hmm.
sometimes you might have 46 pages, but those words, those genes, there might be some, missing out or addition to it or change in it. So then there might be, usually we get autosomal recessive cases because in India, consanguinity is like, especially in South India, consanguinity is seen in very high rates, especially consanguinity is when you get married to your first cousin or your second cousin.
Yeah.
So, because of which you have many autosomal recessive conditions,
Hmm.
and they do not understand what are genes, what are chromosomes. So, this is how I break to them. 46 pages, you have 46 pages, but sometimes in those words on those pages might differ.
Hmm.
So, because of which there could be a problem, in the child. Both of you are completely normal. So, I would be like, both of you have one normal copy and one affected copy. All right. So because of which you're called as carriers. Sometimes, so every pregnancy is a new pregnancy, and every time new combination of gametes come. So sometimes this normal copy might come to the baby, and your normal copy might come to the baby, which is completely normal.
Yeah.
Sometimes your normal copy comes, and one of your partner's affected copy comes. Then it's going to be carriers.
Yeah.
Sometimes both your affected copies comes.
Yeah.
So I would draw them. I would, put a normal copy like this, and for an affected copy, I would just shade them. I would just
Yeah.
put shading, and I would explain them,
Yeah.
and then they understand. So they tell me, okay, 75% normal because carriers are also treated as normal. So they
Yeah.
tell me, okay, 75% normal, only 25%. I'm like, yeah, only 25%. You'll have the remaining 75%. So you have to always tell them in a positive note.
Yeah.
Although 25% is a high risk, but however, you shouldn't be focusing on the 25%, but focus on the 75% where the baby
Yeah.
is going to be normal.
Yeah.
And I would write, if there is a deletion or duplication, I would write A, B, C, D, E, F, and then I would write A, C, D, E, G, F. So then I'll ask them, what has happened here? Then that is B is missing.
Yeah.
Then I
Okay.
would write A, B, B, C, D, E, F, G. I would ask them, what is happening here? B is extra. I would be like, in the same way, A, B, C, D, E, F is normal. Sometimes what happens is, one small part might go missing, like
Yeah.
in this case. And sometimes one part might, be extra. Then they're like, oh, like in this case. I'm like, yeah. So it is all about how you interact with patient
Yeah.
and how you ask them and they tell you.
Yeah.
Because if you're going on explaining them, this is this, halfway through they wouldn't understand. So
Yeah.
always have an interactive counseling session. They also find it interesting. They also will tell you like
Yeah.
this, like that. Okay, fine. So then they'll ask you, okay, in my, and then if it is a balanced translocation case, then I would draw chromosomes and I would cut one part and I'm like, this is going here. Then they would be like, oh, this is what has happened to me. I'm like, then I would be like, yes, this is. Then they show the carrot up in the put. Then I explain them. See, this part has come here and this part has gone there, or there's a small addition.
Yeah.
So it is all about how you develop. So this is over my experience is what I have developed on my own about a book page and the words written. And
Yeah.
there might be a few counselors using different techniques how to do it. And for deletion and duplication, I would write A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then I would write A. I would miss out one alphabet, and I would add an extra alphabet. So it depends from counselor to counselor how
Yeah.
she or he develops their own technique to
Yeah.
counsel
Yeah.
the patient. Yeah.
I really wish I could, clap for you. Just because
Thank
I
you.
think this is by far the most simplest but a very creative answer and a technique that I've learned from a genetic counselor. And I'm saying very confidently that this is probably the best takeaway for me from this interview with you, where I have,
Thank
it's not about just the exact technique that you've described, but I think back in my mind, I've now registered that, you will get patients who are from different cultures, different backgrounds, different understanding levels, because maybe not everyone knows science that well as we do, or maybe
you.
our families do. So I think what I've registered is that it's about remembering the simplest experiences and examples from your school, from the way that your teacher taught you a particular concept, and trying to, apply the same simplest way of making someone understand complex language. And I think that's another very important aspect that you learn from the history of how genetic counseling came up as a profession, that it's about converting complex language into a complex information or technical scientific information into a simpler language
Yeah.
to our public and to our patients and to our clients. So that was fantastic. Thank
Yeah,
you
so
so
even
much.
at my house, my dad is from a science background. He's
Yeah,
a zoology student, so he at least has an idea of what are chromosomes or
yeah,
what are genes and all.
yeah.
But my mom is from a commerce background.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes what happens is I sit here and I counsel, and my mom is sitting there, and she just looks at me and she's like, "Oh my God, even I understood what you're trying to tell." And my granny, for that matter, she also listens when I counsel, and she's like, "Okay, so we'll have 46 pages." She asks me, and it is nice because one day I was just sitting and both of them are just staring at me. I'm like, "What are you people staring at?" So they also understand, and it's nice because
Yeah,
usually we in India, the thing is not everybody comes from a science background,
yeah,
and not everybody goes to college, so they are either 12th standard, or even if they go to college they might be from uh, BCom or
yeah,
some other stream. So for them to understand what is the need for this test, and why should they do this test, and what are the outcomes of the test, you have to explain them. So
yeah.
usually before a patient leaves my cabin, or before the counseling gets over, I make sure I ask them, have you understood?
Mm-hmm.
And if with confidence, usually towards the end of the session, I ask them, do you have any questions to ask?
Yeah,
And they're like, no, ma'am, we're clear about it. Or sometimes the patients are like, one, usually the wife wants to ask something, and when the husband is there, she's not sure. So I'm like, I look at her and I'm like, do you want to ask something? She's
yeah,
like, yeah, ma'am, I have a doubt. I'm like, yeah, please go ahead. So then when she asks me, then she's like, she would be like, could you repeat what you just said? I'm like, yeah, sure. Because at the end of the day, what matters is whether they have understood
yeah,
what you're trying to tell them,
yeah,
because it is them who are going to get the test done. It is,
yeah.
it's for them. They should understand. They should be happy with the
Yes,
information that you give them,
yeah,
because they are the ones who go and tell you, like, I met a counselor and this is what she counseled me. Or next time if they're going to meet a clinician, they would be like, we had a counseling with this particular counselor and this is what they told me, because more than us, they remember what we told.
yes. It is registered in their
Yeah, it is.
memory. And I think I wouldn't be surprised um, to assume that a lot of these patients and couples who probably come and get this information from a genetic counselor, or be a doctor, or maybe a nurse, even for that matter, or from a hospital. I think I would assume that a lot of times, probably what they do is whatever you've told them, they go and say the exact same thing and the
Yes.
exact story with their family, who are probably, 80% of the times, most of them are illiterate, haven't had an education. So it's very interesting when you put this information to them in a simpler language, because that makes it easier for them to go
Yeah.
and share that same information with their family. And
Yeah.
it doesn't make a lot of impact, I believe. And maybe to my listeners as well, the reason we are stressing about this language barrier is an important aspect to discuss, is because as Vaishnavi had said during the interview, that the decision making process in India is not just on the couple or on the individual, but it's in the entire family. So it's very important that we communicate the right information to them and the important information to them, so that
Yeah.
they can then communicate it to their family. And only if they communicate the information right is when they will be able to make um, a acknowledged or a proper decision, right? So yes, the communication is a very important aspect. And I, like I said, I really loved the idea of how you explain chromosomes and the genes in such a simple language to them.
Yeah.
And I, that is definitely my biggest takeaway. So thank you so much again for everything
Thank
that you have
you so
shared
much,
today.
Dee.
It does mean a lot to each and every listener of mine and to me, because we, like I said, we are learning right now only virtually. We are trying to gain every knowledge that we can through these resources that are available online. And I feel blessed and I feel really opportune that I had this opportunity to, interview you today. Now to end the interview, I think the only last thing I would like to ask you is if you have any tips or suggestions for aspiring genetic counselors like us. And yeah, just pretty much anything else that you have to say in the end.
To start over, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, to discuss what is genetic counseling and how is it in India. And tips for the aspiring genetic counselors would be, I'm just 1 year in field, and like any other science student and like any other daughter from an Indian background, I also aspired to become a doctor, which did not happen.
Yeah,
And and yeah, I was heartbroken when I did not get seat and everything. But at the end of the day, I was always patient oriented, and this is something which is patient oriented, which is like a very nice field.
yeah,
So if this, for all the aspiring genetic counselors who are watching this video right now, who once aspired to be a doctor, this is a very nice field. You get to learn so much from patients themselves.
yeah,
So, and you get to spend a lot of time with patients, about 45 minutes to 1 hour, not only with the patients, but their family as well. So, it's a very nice field, it's a growing field, it's an emerging field. Do take up this course, and it is very nice. You'll, at the end of the day, you'll be satisfied when patients, they still remember you, they still call you and they tell you that, ma'am, we have done this test and we're so happy. Thank you so much for guiding us and all of that. So yeah, it's a very nice course. It makes you feel happy because I'm very happy with what I'm doing right now.
yeah,
And when I chose this field, I was able to convince everyone, but not my father, because he was very skeptical about, you know, who does a PG diploma after masters. He was very skeptical about it,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm sure he's proud right now. He's watching, sitting right there. I'm sure he's proud and happy right now. So yeah, that's what matters.
Yeah, interesting. And kudos to you again that you had the spirit and the courage to take up a profession which is not very, well known and established yet in India. It's still growing,
Yeah,
like you said. And yes, as an Indian daughter, I have been through the same thing. And I know that when your parents don't know the profession that you're choosing,
yeah.
they often don't support your idea. And they're like, they don't want you to spoil your life and they don't want you to make wrong decisions.
So
So
my dad took about a week or so, because first he went through and everything, and he's like, okay, fine, if you want to do this, up to you.
yeah.
So yeah, so I was like, okay, fine. But right now he is very proud of me and is very happy. Like, okay, yeah, she's doing something. She's in a good, yeah. So that's what
Interesting.
that matters.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's about having the braveness and the spirit to take up what you think is right. And then ultimately, when you are in it and when you show what you've done, automatically everyone is going to love it and everyone is going to be proud of the decision that you make. So again, a lot of positivity and a lot of new things that I've learned. I hope to continue doing these interviews, and I think it is turning out to be fruitful to me because I'm learning a lot from every one of you that I'm speaking. So thank you so much again, Vaishnavi, for
Thank
your
you so much,
time.
Lee.
And this will be posted very soon on my blog and on my
Okay.
social media accounts. So if you do know any aspiring students who are interested to learn more, you can definitely share the video.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, signing off. Thank you again for giving me
Thank
the
you.
opportunity. And
Like, should we take a picture?
yes, absolutely. Let's do it.
Take a screenshot or should I?